Yo, Eazy.
What's up, guys? My name is Evan Duvall. This is Eazy Does It. Thank you for joining us. Well, what's up, man? So, here with Sam Riggs. For
Yep.
those of y'all tuning in, our buddy Tanner introduced us and hit me up and was like, "Look, man, you gotta sit down with my friend Sam." And yeah, I can't wait to hear your story. It sounds like you've got your feet in a lot of different things, and have had some fun along the way and some struggles along the way. And
Dude, yeah, it's been epic.
Yeah, I can't wait to get into it and hear about all that growth you've procured, and I was looking forward about what you're setting off into next. Sounds exciting.
Yeah, it's been, you're kind of catching me at this like super transformative time in my life.
I love that.
So been in Austin for 14 years, moved here in 2007. It was, I came from Florida.
Cool.
And I was like 18 going on 19, and I wanted to be in music. I wanted to start a band, and, you know, I was already dabbling in songwriting and wanted to develop that. So I, you know, just sold everything and gave away what I couldn't sell and packed the rest.
Yeah.
Which is like what every single one of my moves has been like.
Started fresh.
Yeah. And just drove like 1,300 miles from Florida. My radio got stolen out of my truck the night before I left, and I just drove like no radio for...
Just you and your thoughts, huh?
Yeah. So I got here and I worked for a tractor supply company and then got a job working construction. I was a welder, certified welder, so I got into welding and heavy equipment operator and different things like that, and started playing. Well, actually, if I really am thinking back, I tried college. I went to Austin Community College.
Okay. Yeah, I went to ACC.
Yeah, and it was fun. It was cool. I don't say it was fun. It was not fun. There was a fun part of college.
Right.
And that was my songwriting class. But that was sort of the downfall of my college career because I
just got so absorbed.
Oh, I loved it.
Yeah.
And I stopped going to my other classes.
Yeah.
And like I had to take like remedial math and all this stuff, you know. And
dude, I didn't even dabble. I knew better. Like,
yeah.
I was like 16, going on 17, and you know, grew up right outside Austin in Dripping Springs, Texas, and like the community I grew up in, it was just expected that, you know, you're going to college. Like, that's what everybody did. And I'd never even given it any thought.
Yeah.
You know, I was just like, yeah, I'm going to college. Like, everybody goes to college, you know? And I got like towards that point where you start looking and applying to schools, and I was just like not that interested in it. You know, I was just like, this really doesn't feel like my next step. And like, I was kind of teetering on like playing sports in college, and was doing some like recruitment tournaments and stuff. And that was like the only thing that was really pulling me that direction, and just like offer after offer just kept like falling through, because my best sport was lacrosse, which was brand new here in Texas. And when I was playing, like I had to go to the East Coast to get recruited. So I went up to the East Coast and played. And then all the offers came from these like Ivy Leagues and private schools. And so I started looking at like ROTC options to pay for school, because I couldn't afford a private school or an Ivy League. And then secondary to that, I didn't even think about like my grade point average, you know?
Right, yeah.
So as soon as I started like really looking at what kind of schools I could go to, and while I was like, I'm just going to go to a state university like everybody else. I'm going to party, and I'm going to lose interest in like 1, maybe 2 years. Like, I didn't really see myself making it through. And I was like, somehow I was like very mature about this decision. I was immature about every other decision in my life, but I had like, such clarity.
I'm gonna party and I'm going to drop out.
Yeah. No, it's just like, I don't want to go that route.
Yeah.
So I joined the military, and
and
that's, you know, that took me down a 6-year path there. But yeah, I had no interest in going to college.
Man, first of all, thank you for your service, man. That's a huge commitment.
Thanks,
time.
Man.
And
appreciate the support. I'm just glad it's over and done, and on to the next man. Leave it to the next generation of
100%
patriots.
Dude. Absolutely, dude. So I yeah, so college, like you, like I found out pretty quick. College was not for
Yeah.
me. My songwriting instructor, Robert Skiles, pulled me aside after class. He's like, "Hey, I need you to drop out of college."
Wow.
And I was like, "Why?" He's like, "Well, you're not going to any of your classes." He said, "And to be honest with you, you can come to my class anytime you want and not pay
Yeah.
for it."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh, okay." So I started playing open mics and I started getting into music and I started finding my way through music, which at the time, Facebook, you had to have like a .edu, you know, email. You had to have like, there was no really social media.
Yeah.
I think Instagram was like sort of just starting and mostly people were just like posting pictures of their food,
Yeah.
which is still a thing. But yeah, so I sort of just blunderingly found my way through music at first and worked really hard. 2009, I got laid off, and I bought. I'd already bought a welder, like a welding rig.
Yeah.
And I had this welding rig. I just started Sam Riggs Welding LLC, and I just started hustling. And I would weld my ass off, take on a bunch of big projects, things that I had no right to take on, like spiral staircases and all kinds of stuff that I just had to figure out along the way.
That's cool. It's good money too.
Oh yeah, it was great because I was able to fund like my first album and buy a band van and all these different things. But eventually I got to this sort of jump off point, this like precipice of like, all right, like I've got 1 foot on like blue collar labor, which I'm a huge advocate of, and also 1 foot in the music business. But the music is requiring so much time and attention and energy. It's like I really got to jump off on this thing, but I don't have any money. So I did the only sensible thing, and I sold everything that made me money at the time. I sold my entire welding rig, and I sold my truck, and everything. All I had was this band van. And
it's like we were talking about earlier, the burn the boat.
Yeah, burn the ships, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I just jumped off it. I put out this record called the Lighthouse EP and put out our first single to radio. Amazing. And it just took off like, took off like a rocket in my mind. We went from playing to shows to people who had no idea who we were, just sort of background noise, to a crowd of a couple hundred singing our songs back to us, and that just grew. And I can remember talking to my drummer Chad at the time. We were like, man, I just wish we could just get 100 people in front of the stage. And then 100 became 200, became 400, became 1,000, became 3,000.
Wow.
It was just over the years and the albums and everything that I experienced, it was just this sort of like send it mentality. And touring for me, so I'm an empath, I'm a Libra, and I anybody who's into astrology will know what I mean when I say I feel everything, and I internalize a lot. And so the music road for me, it was really difficult. It led me down some really dark, twisting paths, full on cocaine addiction, coupled with a good old fashioned cocaine overdose, drinking. My liver, like I said, I haven't had a drop since December 3rd, which I've had my drinking more or less under control for a long time, but
congrats on that, man.
Thank you.
How you
my
feel?
liver thanks me. Oh, dude, I feel like
100%.
It's like the days are brighter. Everything's a lot better. My emotions are a lot more even keeled. Because you go through this stage when you stop drinking, and I'm still kind of in that stage where you feel boring, especially in social settings. Social settings is where it's the most difficult to not have a drink, because oftentimes you sort of have to have that, like, oh, I'm not drinking right now, conversation with people, and like, oh, it's okay, man, sorry, and they turn around and everybody has a shot, and you're like standing there with like a bottle of water.
It's tough to do too, because like you start bringing out other people's insecurities, like unknowingly. And you're not even like intentionally trying to do it. I've done that where like I just have something going on the next day, or like I'll be working or something. And like there is a part that like kind of has to play the part. And like I always love Topo Chicos for me, because I get the same like sensation that I feel
the
like
carbonation,
I'm drinking.
stick a lime in there.
If I don't want a beer or something, it gives me the same feeling as if I'm just drinking a beer.
Sometimes just holding something in your hand.
Exactly. But like just engaging in social environments and it's not as bad as it used to be. I think people have more awareness this year around sustaining their energy and how
Yes.
good it feels. But I almost noticed and hanging around some crowds where I'd be like, yeah, no, I'm not drinking and diet, and they'd be like, why not? Like, do you be this like peer pressure approach, or you bring out this insecurity where they're like, they either think that you think you're better than them,
Right.
or you make them feel guilty about their bad habit. It's like, dude, I don't think that at all. Like, I'll
Yeah.
catch you on Friday night and I'll be with the worst of them. But no,
Dude,
it's just
absolutely.
like, yeah, picking and choosing and just maintaining like just a certain awareness of your energy, especially if you have things that you want to achieve.
That's the biggest thing, man. If you got to get
Yeah.
up, you can't get up and soar with the Eagles if you're partying all night with a bunch of
For
turkeys.
sure. Yeah, like I always love giving myself somewhere to be like early Saturday morning. So
Yep.
that if I do, have a night out or make those decisions, I either pay the price or
Calculated risk.
Yeah, it's like it's just a good reminder.
Yeah, dude.
But yeah, man, like I love hearing that, you had that level of commitment to say, you know what, I'm going all in, I'm doing this, and like you said, ascendant mentality, and like, there's so many people in this world that say like, man, I wish I could do that, or like, they're inspired by seeing progress in other people or people achieving their dreams, and there's there's a certain amount of respect for people that have done that if you've done it yourself.
Sure.
But a lot of people don't understand or really know what it takes, and especially for artists to grind that hard and take that many risks, like to get to that level where you're playing inside of those arenas or big shows, like people don't know the hours that you've put in on the background.
Oh, yeah.
And all the experiences, the life experiences that led to your inspiration, and
Absolutely.
really where your craft started to germinate. And I always think that process is interesting because there's so much about life that leads artists to their creative process taking shape.
Yeah, I mean, you're exactly right. There's a huge backstory. It starts when you're a kid, and
Yeah.
it's it just grows over time. And like you said, the discipline and the commitment that it takes to make it through those formative years and into the quote unquote spotlight is
For sure.
is outrageous. I mean, I don't want to say it's easier to do today than it used to be, but there's a lot more channels to get discovered, I think, now than there used to be.
Yeah.
So when I was coming up, through it, I don't want to tell the whole like I walked uphill, 3 miles each way, just go, thing. But it was definitely an interesting sort of like putting it out in the universe and hoping it comes back sort of thing. And now you have
consistent.
Now you have all these social media stats, and you can see which posts are getting more attention and blah 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 blah. It's all about social media, really, in a lot of ways. Because you can make the greatest record on earth, and if nobody, if it doesn't rise to the top, sort of in the river of everything that's going on, nobody's going to hear it.
Right.
In the noise in the world today. So it's kind of like this process of finding yourself, finding your voice, and and then honing it, like you said, sharpening the blade, and then coming out ready to swing. But I think the downfall and sort of talking about the drugs and alcohol thing was you spend forever writing, and you make your first album, second album, however many albums, and then that's like what it, you become, this person, and you're growing, growing up, and you're growing, and you're forming as an artist, and as a, for me as a man, and as a person all along the way. And there's all these pitfalls because you constantly, for me, want to please people. You want to meet their expectations of you as a person and as an artist. And so that led to a lot of partying for me, and a lot of artists do sort of lose their balance when they when the gate swings open and this whole machine, think of like a mechanical bull in every sense of the word, like a machine rolls out. I mean, it is a hell of a ride.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, a lot of kids are getting signed to labels these days that have never stood on stage a day in their life.
Yeah.
And they're put on tour, and they almost have to have keepers in order to protect the investment because they're just not prepared.
Yeah, it's super important to put in that,
Yeah.
lay that groundwork and foundation. I like that like you said earlier, that blue collar approach,
Yeah.
of like knowing that, there's going to be work to be done day in and day
Yeah.
out. And like,
Well, I worked hard. I
yeah,
also had the advantage of being able to make a complete ass of myself and nobody knowing, because
Yeah.
I was cutting my teeth up and down Dirty Six.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
yeah,
And
that'll
like
do it.
I'd get on stage, I learned early on the downfall of just getting absolutely blitzed on stage.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But nobody knew.
Yeah. Yeah. I've seen some bands just fall apart,
Oh, gosh.
on 6th Street or, Antone sets.
Oh, dude, I'm not allowed to play Antones anymore.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. What is it about that place? It just does it to artists.
Well, I think for me, that night sort of took shape in a different way. I was at a really low point in my life, very low point, and I'd been taking a bunch of Adderall earlier that day, and then drinking on top of it. You know what Adderall dam is, right?
Yeah.
As soon as the Adderall wave goes out, like all this alcohol comes rushing in. And I was just hammered like halfway through the set suddenly. But what led up to that is just the people around me at the time. There was like a whiskey sponsor that was like, try our new stuff, and they brought like a whole flight of whiskey shots. I'm like, cool, I'll try 3 or 4 of them, you know what I mean? And it's like, it just all added up. It was the perfect storm, and it ended up being I just got really drunk, and I think played a really good show on stage, but I tend to be really intense on stage, and that was just amplified.
Yeah, it was such a close-up, personal.
With the internal like battle I was already fighting, so there was like some frustration and anger in there and stuff like that. And I was doing guitar flips and all kinds of shit, and climbing on the fire piping and the roofing and stuff like that. And my guitar swung down and caught some girl in the hair, and then ripped a piece of her hair out.
Oh no!
All that kind of stuff, and it was just like, it was sort of, well, what it was like a punk show. I grew up and listened to a lot of pop punk and rock music, so it was the kind of show that I kind of grew up going to see a lot, and the shows that inspire me, but to the wrong crowd.
Right.
And so
nobody was ready for it.
Yeah, it scared people. And then some people were just absolutely rabidly into it.
Yeah.
But it divided the crowd. The management at Anton was just like, what the? This is not the guy that we sat down and talked to earlier today. Like it just, and then I proceeded to that next few days, I almost took my own life. It was a very rough time, and I ended up at the top of this mountain in Colorado, Longs Peak, talking to. This is good. Do you want to hear this whole story?
Yeah, man.
How this thing unfolded?
If you want to share, yeah.
So I was just sort of really struggling in my marriage at the time, and struggling with drug addiction and alcohol. And I sort of, after that show, I bought a red-eye flight to Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd always wanted to climb Longs Peak, and I'd made a couple of goes at it, but I'd never made it to the top for various reasons, inclement weather mostly. And so I get to Colorado, to Denver, and I get an Uber from Denver all the way to Boulder, which is where my Turo that I rented was, which I didn't know. So, but whatever, just chalk it up to the experience. So I get in there and I ride all the way there, and I get my truck, and I'm just in this like super low point. Let my team down. My management just like raked me over the coals after that show. Like it was just a really bad situation, and I just felt like all the good that I could do in the world had already been done, and I wasn't really serving much of a purpose anymore.
Right.
And what was really going on is I was struggling deeply with depression and addiction.
Coping with it.
Yeah, and just like super like just bad decisions pile on bad decisions, and it all just was like just too much for me to handle.
Yeah.
And so I get to Estes Park, which is Rocky Mountains National Park. They're kind of the foot of it there in that little town, and I got my permits to climb, 2-day climb up on Longs Peak. And I was looking at the weather, and I moved my climb up 2 days because the weather was going to kind of be getting funky. So I go in there, and the abbreviated version is I set out on the trail 2 days earlier than I had intended to, and didn't tell anyone, except for the park staff. So I start up the mountain, and I'm climbing, and you start at around 9,000 feet at the trailhead for Longs Peak. It's 14,259 feet, I think. At the summit. So you you're just sweating it out. I'm a, Texas flatlander at the time, not acclimatized. So I'd go
adapting as you're going.
Yeah, just huffing and puffing and all that kind of stuff. And I get up to what's called the boulder field, which is what's like generally the staging field for overnight attempts on Long's Peak. And I set up my tent and stuff, and I'm just down in my heart and and I just kind of have this mission of like there's a huge 1,500 foot sheer cliff face on Long's Peak, and that's gonna be where it happens. You know what I mean? Wow. And that's just I'm not coming back, and I have lost touch with all of my family, and had just completely blocked out my wife at the time, and it was just like the roughest time of my life. So I get up in the morning about 3 o'clock. Well, let me just reel back in. So I fall asleep, and it's like just deep sleep, exhausted sleep. And I fall into this dream, and I'm down at the tree line on the mountain, and I'm running. And as I run, the snow is getting deeper, but there's something chasing me. And I look behind me, and it's this bear, but it's jet black, and it moves like The Grudge, like static. Wow. Yeah. And it has like bloodshot, like human, like eyes. It's just absolutely terrifying.
Intimidating.
Yeah, and this like deep, like thundering roar, and I'm just running, and I break out of the tree line, and I shed my pack, and I'm trying to run, and eventually the snow's like waist deep, and I just fall, and it just descends on me, and it just like right before it just closes its jaws on my throat, and it's this loud roar, and I snap awake to like the loudest thunder crack I had ever heard. And I, shaking hands, open up the tent, and I look out over the boulder field, and off the boulder field is this massive thunderstorm. Damn. But not on the boulder field. It was sort of skirting in between the mountains there, and it was all filtering into my dream.
Yeah.
So I finally get back to sleep. I get a little bit of sleep. I'm up at like 3:45, make a little something to eat, and pack a light pack, with some ropes and stuff like that, because it's pretty icy up on the upper peak where I was going. And I just started out. The pack is light. I got food in my stomach, and I started to feel a little bit better. Making my way up, and it's hard. I mean, Long's Peak's not a walk in the park. And I get up finally to the home stretch, and the home stretch is about 45 degrees, and it's just covered in ice. And you make a bad move on the home stretch, I mean, you're going down thousands of feet, over some really rough shit. Probably won't make it. So anyway, I just sort of scramble to the top, and I make it, and I'm the first one up there, and I'm above the clouds.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the clouds below, and I sort of step over to the cliff, just sort of like looking at it, and I sit down because I think just the weight of everything just sort of hit me. And I start thinking about my family. Wow. And I start thinking about my brother and my mom. And my mom raised my brother and I. And like, what a letdown.
Yeah.
I was. But what a letdown this would be, and the fact that my brother might not survive this. And my mom damn sure wouldn't. She would have a broken heart. And so there's all this like emotional, like, and I'm just crying. And I hear this noise behind me. And I'm like, it's the nightmare bear. Yeah. And I turn around, and there's this old man coming over the peak. And he's got these two young men with him. And he's got this long beard. He looks like a prophet. Yeah. In overalls.
Wow.
with a hoodie over it.
Down home monk.
Yeah. And I sort of get up, and I go introduce myself, and he says, my name's Jamie, and there's my sons, and one of them was getting married, and they were just doing this sort of last, hike together. And he said, last time I was up here was in the 80s, and I'm a cattleman from Iowa. And that idea just kind of told me a little bit about himself. And one of his sons didn't have a pair of gloves, so I gave him my gloves. I said, I'll just leave them at the tent down there on the boulder field on your way out. And they turn around to go, and I sit back down, sort of still in this really just emotional turmoil place, and I feel his hand on my shoulder. And I turn around, and it's Jamie. He says, I hate to ask you this, but I don't know if we can get down, and I saw in your pack you have a rope. would you help us? And, you know, without even thinking, I was like, yeah, of course. Yeah. I just, you know, got up and set up a terrain belay and hand line and got him down the home stretch and through the narrows. And by the time we knew it, you know, before we knew it, I was halfway back to the tent.
Yeah.
And Jamie and I were talking. It turns out Jamie was a Mennonite minister.
Wow.
And we're talking about life and love and hard times and heartache and all this kind of stuff. And as I said goodbye to them, you know, as they walked on down and I started packing up my tent in the boulder field, I realized that I had a bigger purpose in life. And then I just needed to find that.
Man.
And I knew, and that was sort of where I had already sort of been dabbling in adventure and being in the outdoors.
Yeah.
And I recognized the direct impact it had on my health and my mental health. And that was where I started the Air and Opportunity Adventure Company idea, was to just sort of you know, help people through the shadows.
That's awesome, man. Yeah. I mean, in no way did I think mentioning Antones was going to bring this up.
So
but,
that's sort of where that kind of went. And then life after that became this love affair with the outdoors, which led me to where I am right now.
That's great. That's amazing, man. What an amazing story. Thank you for sharing that with me and with those listening. You know, I think there's so many points of that story where, you know, it just opened my mind to how amazing that, you know, transcendence of, you know, things started to go down. You know, just for one, I mean, Jamie seems like an angel sent, you know, from
really,
above,
honestly,
you know, to kind of guide you back onto your path. And, you know, I think there's a lot to be said that might be relatable in that story for others, you know, especially what we perceive as, you know, possibly someone at the height of their career or just, you know, in a part of that machine for sure. You know, you're playing, you're living out your dream, you know, you're writing music, you're playing for crowds, and you're caught up in this beast. You know, it's like, you know, like you said, there are expectations from, you know, band members, from management, from your fans, you know, to show up and to live up to this standard. And it's a high one, you know, to keep that growing. And if you're not filling your own cup, you know, it's, you know, how long does that last, especially when substance comes into play?
Not long.
You know, to have that moment where you found this breaking point and we're called to this adventure, you know, it sounds like that was, you know, a singular moment where you were able to turn your life around and get some things back in perspective. And, you know, some people don't have that or have never had that, or, you know, they don't know that struggle. But for me, myself, you know, I've been to rock bottom, you know, a couple times, and you know, I get less and less afraid of it every time because I know that I'm strong enough and capable to get up off my ass and climb my way out and put that work in, you know. And I think that's what, you know, expands your potential as well. You know, I've always 100%. Told myself with great highs comes great lows. And, you know, it's kind of observing life from this, you know, polar perspective where, you know, if you're at the bottom, you know, you're raising that bar of, you know, what your potential is if you put the work in to get there.
Right.
And, you know, this story for me just brings up, you know, this kind of metaphor of life and the climb and, you know,
dude,
finding your way to the peak and turning it around. And yeah, so what would you say your adventure company is called? AO?
It's called the Air and Opportunity Adventure
Air and Opportunity.
Company.
Yeah, amazing, man. That's sounds like such a great opportunity to come out of it with that clarity on, you know, being that guide and finding that sense of, you know, leadership and, you know, being there for other people and they need you. And I think that's so important for people to have that sense of purpose and to not be completely just what their job is, you know, but to find that role.
And I think that finding that role for me was a huge part of this. Like, it prepared me for this next chapter of my life, because I continued to play music for years after that. But it's sort of like once you've seen behind the curtain and you know it's there, you can't unsee it.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't that I didn't believe in music or thought it was all for nothing. I've always been in love with music, but I was highly aware at that point of the toxicity of the machine, so to speak, at times, and how amazing it can be, but just how destructive it can be as well.
Sure.
And so I started to sort of inch more and more into like straddling the line between music and adventure.
Yeah, finding that balance.
And running the Air and Opportunity Adventure Company gave me just incredible perspective on where I had been and where I was and where I wanted to be, where I wanted to go.
Yeah.
But
big places will do that to you.
yeah, big mountains will humble you to that place.
Yeah,
You know,
I think
it'll
it's finding that balance between, if you feel like a star up on stage and you got the lights and you got
yeah,
the booze and the fans and everything, like I could see how you start to kind of embody that and you become like the center of your own world. And, you hear that story.
It's a dangerous place to be.
Celebrities or stars and, balancing that out with nature is perfect because, there's nothing quite as humbling as big, wide open spaces. I mean,
Yeah.
seeing that from, the backside of a aircraft carrier in the middle of the ocean did that for me, man.
Absolutely.
Like, just realizing how vast the ocean is.
And how small we are.
Yeah, and then, I mean, I did a hike solo at the Grand Canyon and spent the night out alone by the river.
Epic.
And that was an amazing trip. But, I mean, just these vast, vast places that you can explore and just feel small. And what that does for you as far as perspective is so amazing and important.
Because you can wrestle with your ego so much in life. I think that's been a big part of this whole like last 12 months for me. My son is 16 months old, and when he was born, I was already well on this sort of pathway to where we're going now. But it really showed me all of the dark places in my heart and mind that I needed to address. I needed to confront it.
Yeah.
And
a lot of people don't.
Yeah, well, they don't, or they put so much value on social status that they think it's somehow evens out.
Yeah, our image.
Really, social status is worth jack shit.
Yeah.
It started way back in the day. Thousands of years ago, and by now it's just in our DNA to crave social status. But it started with like, if you have this many goats or this many pigs, you have this much power in the village.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like, and that equals safety and survival. So that's sort of where it begins, but now it's gotten to this point where people crave fame and they crave social status, and I realized that I had never craved it really, but I had achieved it. And when I got to that point in my life where, and by no means am I saying like I'm a superstar, regionally famous maybe, but
right.
you put 4,000 people in Billy Bob's Texas, that's a good feeling. You know what I mean? But it can really trick you into thinking that you're any more than them. Yeah. And so the ego death for me has been such a big part of my story over the last year of looking at that little blonde-headed boy and realizing that I used to care about what people thought about me, and really I just care what he thinks.
Yeah.
That's it. And
super grounding.
Yeah, it is very grounding. And so like you're talking about the wide open spaces, you can grapple with your ego for months and weeks and years, but if you can stand side by side with it with your arm around each other's shoulder and look at those vast expanses, there's sort of this aha moment of like, you don't have to tell yourself anything. It's there.
Yeah, it's
to see there. And seeing is believing, and experiencing that.
Nothing is gained or obtained. You already have it.
You have it. It's all inside of you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've had a few, tough moments and inspiring moments in my life, where, I've felt that where, at first glance, I look internally and I feel powerless. And then by going there, you realize how much power you really do have. But it takes that honest interpretation of, those feelings and sometimes it's not the place that we want to go, or want to admit that we want to, that we're dealing with. And I think that's what's so great about you telling your story and, people relating to each other in these terms is that, it's becoming more and more prevalent now, especially recently, that people are being more open about these conversations and, mental health is making its way to the forefront.
Oh
of
yeah.
conversations and success stories. And, I just started thumbing through Will Smith's book the other day, just started it. And he kind of took the green lights approach where he
Okay.
just comes on heavy and strong, about how he
Talking about
grew
the whole
up
thing.
and yeah, how hard his dad was on him and,
Man.
how that fucked him up really, and
Yeah.
and it just wasn't the image of Will Smith that I had built up. And I think it's so healthy for us to re engage how we look at people of status and
Yeah.
know that they're all just human beings. And then
Absolutely.
all the way to the ground level, amongst friends, amongst family, amongst peers and coworkers. It's important that we look each other in the eye and just accept each other for
Yeah.
exactly where they are and know that most of us are trying, man. That's the only thing I want to see out of people.
Yeah.
No matter how bad off they are, like no matter how low you feel like you are, like I love when people are trying and working towards anything.
Yeah. I mean,
Know?
we're all struggling with the same disease called the
Mm.
human condition.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean, if it's, some people are different places on the ladder, but yeah, like you said, the gumption to get up every morning and at least strive for something, and that's easier said than done for
Sure.
some folks, but yeah, you're right. I think that's just a very important aspect of our culture and community today is that people are sort of, there was, I don't know when it sort of was developed, but there was this, it was not talked about in mental health. It was just sort of something you didn't talk about for the longest
Yeah.
time. And now it's on the forefront, which is great. I just think I'm a huge advocate for mental health, and I'm a huge advocate for mental health through the outdoors. As an alternative to pharmaceuticals.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm a big believer in that.
So throughout your career, like growing up, you fell in love with music, started songwriting, your late teens, set your eyes, like dropped out of school, started working,
Uh-huh.
sold everything to fund this, pursuit of this dream, right? And, I think it's interesting to talk about kind of how that progressed from trying to obtain, you know, and then having,
Right.
getting what you wanted, but not necessarily taking the time to take care of yourself throughout and just
Right.
sustain it. Uh, Brings me back to that bear. Like you knew that something
Yeah.
was chasing you,
Mm-hmm.
and it was gonna catch up.
Absolutely.
That dream is beautiful because like it was a scary, it was this beast. It was right hot on your trail.
Oh yeah.
And I think witnessing that, whether it was in a dream state or not, just your subconscious telling you like, look, dude, like this is your moment.
Absolutely.
And I want to talk about kind of what shift you felt after you confronted that and started putting in the work to find that balance between your work life and your personal life.
Yeah.
How much harmony you felt internally throughout that process, and what that was like.
Man, that is that whole process is what's brought me to one of the biggest life decisions that I've ever made, which was last month. So whenever I started to sort of, whenever I opened my eyes to, the outdoors and everything that held for me, there was a little bit of a turf battle going on. I was a new pilot. I just got my pilot's license, so I became just super into aviation and flying in the Southwest in Utah.
Yeah, congrats.
Thank you.
That's
and
awesome.
that was a huge deal for me. And
talk about wide open spaces.
Oh, dude, yeah. And I instead of buying a house, I bought a little Cessna 182.
Yeah.
And put a lot of money into that and keeping that thing in the air. And now I'm a commercial fixed wing and helicopter pilot, and that to me, connecting flight in the outdoors has been like a huge thing for me. But to talk about the process and what that held for me, it was a beautiful, just I would say some people would say it was a distraction, but it was a beautiful vessel to step onto for me over the years, because what it meant was, so ever since I was a little kid, I wanted to be a pilot.
Mm-hmm.
And I can remember at a very young age, maybe 7 or 8 years old, flipping through the fly fishing magazine of my grandfather's and seeing this ad in the back of Fly Alaska, picture of a float plane backed up to some gravel beach with this woman holding a huge steelhead or whatever, with the fly rod. And I was like, wait a minute. And I remember just calling them on the phone and being like, do you fish from the airplane? Like, how does this work? And trying to figure that out. And ever since then, I wanted to be a seaplane pilot, fly floats in Alaska ever since I was a little kid.
Yeah.
But it was like sort of a back burner dream, and music came first, and then aviation followed in the outdoors as well. So now to sort of sidestep for a minute, I made an attempt at one of the 7 summits in 2018 at Concagua in Argentina in the Andes.
Wow.
And I failed. I got HACE, high altitude cerebral edema. Was climbing with an awesome team. I was with Nims Persia of you've seen him on the 14 summits thing, and we this was before he had set out to do that. But had been touring hard, drinking hard, had not prepared my body really, and I was just trying to keep up with it. It was a badass team. It just kicked my ass, and I ended up taking a helicopter ride down off the mountain because I was in such rough shape, and it really messed up my knee. And I was like, man, this is awesome. I'm going to learn how to fly helicopters when I get back home. Fast forward like 3 weeks later, I step into the office of the local flight school, and they're like, we'll put you, your instructor will be Rachel. And this freaking beautiful blonde walks through the door, and we connected, and we fell in love.
Wow.
And we just got married on Saturday.
Wow.
Yeah.
Congrats.
And we got a little boy.
Amazing.
Yeah, and that's sort of a condensed version but she's an incredible woman. And
how perfect.
So we decided, so I put out a record in 2021, called Dark Sky.
Mm.
That was just, I love that record.
Yeah.
The one before that was 2019 called Love and Panic. And I feel like with both those records, I really got to say a lot of what I wanted to say. But when Rook came around, our son, I realized that all of this outdoor stuff, all of the flying, all of it, it was there to serve as a foundation for being a father to him.
Sure.
And that became my number one priority, which was being a good dad and being a good partner to Rachel. And being on the road full time. Some families can do it. We really struggled because she was working 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off in the Gulf of Mexico as a S-76 captain, and I was on the road, and Rook was just getting the shit end of the deal.
Yeah.
A lot of babysitters, a lot of help from family and stuff, but he was having bad separation anxiety, and Rach and I were constantly missing each other. Went so far as to get a house down in Louisiana to live in so we could be all closer together. Hurricane Ida wiped that out. So everything was just sort of crumbling in our hands. And finally, at the end of last year, we just sat down. She kind of broke down, and we both did. And I said, well, something's got to change.
Mm-hmm.
We got to figure out something. And where can we both thrive? And by this time, I was already a float plane pilot.
Yeah.
And had bought a float plane for the adventure company. And she said, I need mountain time and long line time experience in order to be able to fly, firefight, helicopter stuff, or any of what I want to do. We're both very adventurous people. I said, where do you want to do that? She said, I think Alaska.
Yeah.
So rewind back to 7-year-old me.
Adventure, yeah.
Yeah. So I was like, well, where in Alaska? She said, I don't know. I think Juneau would be nice. So I was like, yeah, that sounds great. I don't know if I can get it. I've only got a few hundred hours. Yeah. Let me just see what's out there. I look up Alaska Seaplanes right there, hiring float plane pilot.
Wow.
So I'm like immediately having like imposter syndrome because I'm like, I'm a songwriter. Like I've been like a rock star for the last 10 years.
Yeah.
Are they going to even want to look at me?
Yeah.
So I put in my application, and you know, I've flown my ass off as well. So that was sort of what got me in the door was, you know, owning my own plane and the experience of doing that, all the backcountry flying, all the off-airport, dirt strip, canyon, mountain flying that I've done.
Mm-hmm.
And they hired me.
Wow.
And I was like,
Congrats,
babe, I got
man.
a job.
Yeah, that's
She's
epic.
like, you got a job. And so we went up there to to do the sort of meet them and talk to them and find a place to live. And she got a job flying helicopters in Juneau. So
yeah,
what I decided to do was that music has been an amazing thing for me. I'm not done with music by any means.
Yeah.
I've got 2 records coming out this year.
Amazing.
But I am ready for the next chapter. And the next chapter is Alaska.
Yeah.
And so I'm
That's
full-time.
amazing, man. At the end of the month.
Yeah, at the end of the month, man. We're leaving
Wow.
I'm leaving on the 26th. I got a 26-foot U-Haul, and I'm pulling my truck behind it. And then, you know, Rachel's going to fly back down and get her car. But she's going to fly up with the Rook, and I'm going to drive all the way up through the Yukon.
Yeah.
Get on a ferry from Skagway all the way down to Juneau. Got a house. We've got everything lined out. And it is the biggest leap of faith I've ever taken in my life.
Yeah.
Because basically, I'm only doing 3 or 4 shows this year.
Yeah.
Doing 3 shows in June and possibly 1 in October.
It's good. It'll be a good year to focus in on that transition and move and
Yeah.
get settled in.
I get to wake my boy up every morning and put him,
Yeah.
put him in bed every night. Spend a lot of time with him. I get 10 days off at a time in the wintertime.
Wow.
10 days on, 10 days off from
Yeah.
October to March, and that's just, you know. And then I fly in the Alaskan wilderness all summer long.
That's awesome.
You
man.
know, it's like
I
threatening me
can't
with a
believe
good
that.
time.
That's gonna be amazing.
So, and I still get to run the Air and Opportunity Adventure Company up there and in Utah through October and November.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Dude, there's 2 stories that like came to my mind that just have inspired me so deeply in how my mind took shape. One was earlier in life when I read Jimmy Buffett's A Pirate Looks at 40. And that was one of the first books, like, I really remember reading.
Is that
And
good? I've always wanted to
so
read it.
good, man. But the one part of that book stuck out to me, and it's where he had his like seaplane and would just talk about how he just fly to all these islands in the Gulf, you know,
dude.
just to go fish.
Yeah.
And he'd load up with his, guitar and a fishing pole and just fly out there. And as soon as I got that in my head, I was like, that's my dream. Like, that's my goal. Still is to this day to get one of those. So,
Well, dude, you got to come up to Juneau.
I would love to, dude.
Literally. I mean,
I love, I've always been a big adventure guy, or some might call it a daredevil, I rock climb.
Get
and
you and Tanner
rappel,
up there
and
with me. Okay.
That'd be amazing, man. Yeah. And then ultimately, like, my goal is to get my skydive cert out here and base jump, and like, I'm here
5 days.
Yeah, I'm here for the rush for sure.
Oh,
I like
dude.
to see, the potential of life.
I've
and
got some
that
friends in
includes
Moab
fear.
you need to meet.
Definitely,
Yeah,
man.
my friend Eli out in Moab, Eli the heli guy on Instagram. Look him up.
I will.
He's awesome, and they all a bunch of base jumpers and skydivers out there. You love that.
Badass. Yeah, I'd love to go out there and meet them. And then secondly, the one book that changed my teenage years. I've reread this book so many times, but it was Into the Wild.
Oh, dude.
And that movie, But
Yes.
I read the book first, and actually, the belt I wear today was actually handmade by a buddy of mine. Shit, my knife's all stuck. But take a look at that. It's my buddy. He had just lost his mother.
Dude, yes.
While we were stationed in Japan.
Look at
and
this.
His mom passed away, and he had just picked up hand tooling leather. And, he told me he'd make it for me. And then as he was grieving, he made this belt for me by hand.
Wow.
And I just remember looking at it. But you see the school bus from the
I see
Alaskan
it.
mountain range out there.
That's
And,
powerful.
yeah, man, when he handed me the belt, it was wild. Like, as soon as it hit my hands, I could just feel the emotion and energy that he had put into it.
Wow.
And, such a beautiful gift,
That
to,
is
to
astonishing.
receive that. But I love that scene from Into the Wild with that bus, you know, that
Dude.
magic school bus.
Yeah, man. What an incredible story that was. And, you know, just his life and the way that it all came to be and everything that he discovered along the way. And obviously a tragic ending, but.
Yeah. And I think that's, you know, as tragic as the ending is, you know, I think it just makes your heart ache because you know that it was unintentional.
Yeah.
You know, and he was starting to see where he fit in a society
finding his way.
He had grown up, you know, disagreeing with. And, you know, I love that story because it made me take a second look at structure and how we're told to live our lives. And,
right.
you know, this sense of adventure that calls out to every single one of us. It's just there's people that make the time and space and there's people that don't, you know, and it's like I want those memories, man. Like it's so important that I see different horizons and feel different emotions and, you know, to dabble with, like I said, fear and, you know, uncertainty of safety. You know, I think it's so good for
life on the edge.
You know, our you know, I think on a physiological and psychological level, it's essential, you know, to struggle and to be afraid and, you know, to be uncertain and
it's part of the
going
hero's
to the unknown.
journey.
Yeah, I think that and just the way we're made up as human beings, you know, talking about that kind of that origin of, you know, how our psychology and physiology developed was just, you know, some days you'd have food, sometimes you didn't, sometimes you were the prey, sometimes you were the predator. You know,
man.
I think it's important that we induce that somehow, whether it's through a sense of adventure or fitness or whatever it is to find that stress. And
yes, that good. You know, talking about stress. You know, the Wim Hof method. I'm sure you're very familiar with that.
I've dabbled.
So he talks about how stress is such an important part of releasing, you know, good hormones into our bloodstream, and dealing with stress and anxiety and depression and all kinds of things. And you know, good types of there's good stress and there's bad stress. And that's where the breathing and the cold water comes in.
Definitely. Yeah, you know? you do breath work. And
I do, man. Especially on days where I'm really just going through it, you know, I'll just stop and take 10, 15 minutes.
It's so transformative.
Yeah. And it's so easy for me because you don't even have to do it. All you got to do is go on YouTube, Wim Hof.
Yeah.
Just go YouTube, Wim Hof. There's all these breathing exercises. I just push play, put it on the bed beside me, close my eyes and do it. And it's like 10 minutes. I mean, it's do you a year's worth of good.
Oh, yeah. I use Laird Hamilton and Gabby Reese's app. It's called XPT. And I love them as a couple and what they've done with the fitness game and everything and nutrition game coming from Laird's surfing background.
Yeah.
But they've got some great breathwork sessions that they call them like exploratory breathing.
Okay.
And it's insane, man, what it can do, you know, for you on a physiological level where, like, you know, you're just using breath and it almost becomes like psychedelic in nature.
Dude,
you know,
it does.
It's like light will start changing and I'll start getting different sensations of like warmth and cold and, you know, blood rushing through my face and limbs. It's like, wow, this is such a powerful tool, and it's the single most important thing that we just do completely passively. And if you're not doing it right, like,
there's all these studies that have shown that most people, like, there are a lot of people who experience fatigue on a daily level. It's because they're not breathing enough. They're not taking in enough oxygen.
Yeah, and then I've seen studies on the opposite side as well, where people are over breathing.
Yep.
And super interesting to learn the disparity there. When I was training, I was a personal trainer at Onnit, and I implemented a lot of that work into training sessions where, you know, I would implement nose-only breathing into warm-ups or the workouts or to recover through, like, you know, interval training. And it was badass to watch how efficient the body is when you start breathing correctly. You know, your body upregulates the nervous system in like a matter of like a minute or two when you're breathing through your nose. And it can take, you know, 10 minutes to 30 minutes to get warmed up if you're just breathing through your mouth, which is almost everybody's reflex.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Because your brain's saying, hey, get more oxygen.
Yep.
And then, you just do what's easy, and just breathe through your mouth, and
So
especially
breathing
when
through
you're
your
tired.
nose.
Dude, yeah, it's
And Austin
incredible.
with the cedar, that can be pretty extreme sometimes.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah,
Yeah.
I got all into it when I was my last year in Japan, and I was, stationed overseas and had nothing to do. I had no social life, no girlfriends, went to bed alone every night. So I used to tape my mouth shut at night. Like, if anybody walked in the room, they would have been like, "What
are you into?"
doing?" Yeah. And but it was wild because I read this book called The Oxygen Advantage by Patrick McKeown, and I think he's an Irish doctor, and he talked all about these practices that you could just implement immediately, and taping your mouth was one. And I noticed an immediate change in how much energy I woke up with.
Okay.
Instead of feeling real bogged down and lethargic in the morning, you wake up feeling refreshed. You actually
Wow.
get the sleep that your body was really
Meant to
intended to
have.
sleep. Yeah. And I started running and biking, doing nose only breathing, and had to slow my pace down a lot.
Yeah.
But then I noticed that the more I stuck with it, the nose only breathing, the faster my running times and pace got.
Really?
Actually tracking it on my watch,
Sure.
writing all that down. And then my resting heart rate just started dropping. It was like, I was usually sitting around like high 50s. And then I did this probably for like a few months. And my resting heart rate was just like 57, 54, 51, 49, 45, 41. I would sit around the 40 mark when I was breathing correctly.
Wow, dude.
Yeah, it was crazy. And
That's phenomenal.
You feel refreshed, but yeah, I think like we're talking about, just I think it comes back to just having an awareness,
The connection with
little,
your body.
yeah, little things that you can do better. Even things that you may not think about. It could be breathing. It's the most passive thing we do. But that translates into other areas of your life once you dial in that focus and say, okay, well, this is something I've been doing my whole life. Like, it's breathing, talking, how can we do these things better?
The 1% rule, right?
Right.
1% better each
every
day.
Yeah, maybe it's writing. Maybe it's all these things that we take for granted and just say, hey, these are just things that I do.
Right.
Asking yourself, if you can do it 1% better, then you will start to grow.
Yeah, I mean, it's inevitable. The growth is inevitable at that point, and you that's going to translate into higher self-esteem and all kinds of different things.
Yeah, I think it's that craving for social status, as we were talking about earlier, where you do start focusing on the ladder itself.
Right.
How can I climb that ladder? And I think what's dangerous, especially with social media, is that there's all these different forms of comparison, even subconsciously, where you say like, oh, I want what they have. It could be as simple as like, oh, like,
I want that view.
I want that house in Alaska or whatever.
Oh,
you're just like living, you're thinking about it on your phone.
Spending your whole life wanting something.
Not Googling jobs available or looking at the housing market, like actually actionable things.
Yep.
That could stay as a want on your phone forever,
Dude, totally. And not to mention just like the constantly feeling like you're not good enough, or these different things, or watching other people's success. I think that's where, there's that old saying, nobody likes a hero, right? And so society tends to sort of pull people down off the pulpit once they've put them there.
Yeah.
But I think that that's just human nature, but it's exacerbated by social media. As soon as somebody climbs up, people start looking for cracks. You know what I mean? And I've got a love-hate relationship with social media. I think it's a really cool way to be able to tell and discover some amazing stories, and to be able to share and connect with people.
Yeah, I think it.
But it's, for the most part, I generally think that social media is incredibly destructive.
Yeah, it's a tool, and it needs to be used as such.
Yeah.
Like, I don't carry a hammer with me everywhere I go. Like,
that's a great way to do it. Rach and I were talking about putting social media on our iPads and then keeping iPads at home, so that if you want to go on social media, you know, you got to wait till you get home and go on Instagram and post something or read something or whatever. And then it's just a matter of regulating yourself at home versus all day long.
That's where my problem was. And I'm sure you had the same issue, was like, oh, you know, like Instagram is where I work. Like I'm working,
Yep.
you know, and like I started like just having less and less boundaries of when and where that was appropriate. And I realized that like I was working all the time because it was on my phone, you know, like I'd be out at home, I'd be watching TV, I'm sending emails, I'm on Instagram, like all these things. And it's like, when do I really get the time to just decompress and like
and there's
be
also,
with my own energy?
So how did you and Tanner meet?
We met at a party here at Native, actually. I think the first party I went to was his birthday party.
Okay.
It was like this fire and ice party.
So that's totally
And
Tanner.
yeah, no, he's always throwing these like
Dude's
wild
friggin'
parties.
awesome, man.
And you know, I'm in the event space. Like I've got an eye for, you know, what a good production takes and the work that goes into it. And I hadn't met him before. And I went up to him that night and I was like, well, you know, I don't know you, man, but I want to wish you a happy birthday. And, you know, this is a great party. And we just got to chatting, you know, and I could see the composure and level-headedness that he had.
Yeah.
While a 400-person party was going on. And I was like, that guy's got something that a lot of event coordinators don't have. You know, I see people running around, pulling their hair out, stressing out, you know, yelling at people. And Tanner's just got this like down home, grounded approach.
Yeah, they're either
like,
freaking out or they're getting hammered.
Yeah, exactly.
And Tanner's like just
even keeled
and focused.
Just making sure that everybody's having a good time, wanting to connect with people. And, you know, I love seeing that in people that care about their reputation and care that people genuinely have a good time. And
so you and Tanner met,
that. Yeah,
but you didn't meet on social media.
No, it was just a party. Yeah.
So this podcast, Tanner hit me up and said, "Hey, I got something for you. You're really gonna like it."
Yeah.
So, and then here we are doing this podcast. That's all that to say, like, I feel like the better, like not better, but a lot of really great connections are made outside of social media.
For sure.
Through people.
Yeah, I think so too.
Because that's where it's happened for centuries and, you know, thousands of years, obviously, is just word of mouth. And, you know, I'm not saying that, you know, it's not a useful tool for business, but I think a business can really succeed off of word of mouth.
Definitely. Yeah, especially here in Austin. Austin's definitely a word of mouth town. And I think it's really important that we continue to do business that way as much as it's going towards like Zoom calls and, you know, these, you know, e-meeting and like all that stuff. It's for me, it's just like, dude, I gotta do business eye to eye, handshake to handshake. Dude. Like, I don't really want to do business with anybody that I can't
feel their aura,
call
man.
and meet for a coffee or talk something through, you know, and really feel their energy as well.
Dude, 100%.
You know, I feel like you don't really get to know each other through these devices.
Yeah.
You know, there's a key component that's missing, and that's like actually how your energies are, you know, can, you know, help one another. And you know, I think that's important to sit with that.
That's a huge thing, and it's something I'm going to be leaning a lot in this next chapter is going, you know, getting off social media, not getting off social media entirely, but posting on social media only when I have something to say. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then sort of checking it sparingly for feedback, because the feedback's not really what's important to me. It's the little cool connections I get to make with people and stuff like that. So,
following up.
But yeah, man, this has been awesome. You guys got an incredible thing going
Thank you so much, dude. Yeah, I'm so excited for your next chapter, and it sounds like quite the adventure. I can't wait to
insane. You got to come
me
up.
Some pictures. I'd love to come up if I get the
Bro,
space.
imagine. So we fly the float plane in, land on a mountain lake, make our way up this trail up to this cliff face, climb up. You could be on a lake, and then at some point during that day, we could be standing on top of a glacier.
Wow, the same day.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if it's like a first ascent, although it could possibly be. But I've definitely got my mind set on some like badass adventures like that.
I'm all about it.
Yeah,
I need more of that in my life. I've been caught up in the grind, and like that's my entire trajectory, is to get to the point where like I've got the time and space to do that.
Let's do it.
You know, I've got the income rolling passively. But yeah, man, I think that's singular most important thing in life.
Come do a
is
podcast
new
on the
horizons.
wing of
Let's
a
do it.
float plane.
I'm ready for it. I'm ready for it. I'm all about setting, and
Yeah.
that sounds badass. Well, cool, man. Well, I wish you the best, Sam.
Evan, thanks so much, man.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Absolutely. Thanks for
All right,
having me.
brother.